What's going on, guys? Over here. Welcome back to another video for my Let's Talk F1 series. This is part of the series where I get to talk about real-life Formula 1 over the course of a season. This for the 2016 season. And right now we are doing car launch analysis. And we're finally getting around to analysing the 2016 Force India Challenger. So this is the 2016 Challenger for the Force India team. And as you can clearly see, it is very, very similar to last year's car. And it is very much an evolution of last year's car. In terms of the actual paint job itself, not a lot has actually changed, at least to my eye, because I don't really look at the Force India in detail too much in terms of the livery. So maybe if any of you Force India fans out there can tell me if there's any huge difference to the livery. I can't really see one. It pretty much looks like the same lick of paint as last year. But let me know what you think of the car in general afterwards, towards the end of this video in the comments below. But basically, yeah, it is basically a huge evolution of last year's car. Vijay Mallya saying in interviews yesterday in the launch of this car that is very much based off the B spec car that they finished off the 2015 season. If you remember, last season in 2015, Force India basically had two different cars. The A-spec car, which they started off the season with, and then their B-spec car. The A-spec was sort of the unfinished product because they were a little bit tight on schedule over the winter period. So they started off with an A-spec car and said they would be bringing a B-spec car later on in the season. And that's when we saw things like the nostrils in the Force India on the front nose and just a general change over the entire car, just a tidier package of the B-spec car. And this 2016 package is pretty much just using the base of that B-spec car and building upon it. Force India have stated the reason why their 2016 Challenger is pretty much an evolution of last year's car because they're trying to keep resources for the 2017 season. Of course, you guys know, come next year, 2017, the rules will be changing quite a lot. They're actually having a crunch time meeting today with the FIA and all the team bosses to kind of finally decide that. They have to decide by the end of the month. But yeah, 2017 is going to be a very different year in terms of for the car's looks. The engine is going to stay the same, but the actual aerodynamic package of the cars, there'll be new regulations that govern the 2017 cars. We're hearing of a wider car, lower rear wing, bigger tyres perhaps, and different front wing dimensions. So Force India is saving money and saving resources to plan that 2017 car. They're probably already starting some R&D, and obviously once the regulations are actually set in stone, then they will be, as will all teams be, already researching for next year's car, which is always the case in Formula 1. They're always developing next year's car throughout the entire season, and every single car that you see every single race is pretty much just a prototype in the making. Obviously, with this year's regulations, it's a little bit weird for Force India and most teams, actually, that the fact that the rules are changing so much that for, you know, some midfield teams like Force India, it's maybe not actually worth putting that too much of R&D into this year's car because it's going to change so much for 2017. And Force India have cited that the fact that they ended 2015 with a very strong package and that their car consistently throughout the second half of the season with a B-spec car performed quite well to their standards. They felt it was quite good out on track, and that they felt that there was no huge kind of improvement that needs to be made in terms of like an overhaul of you know, concepts or kind of like a huge revolution like Ferrari this year. Obviously teams like Ferrari, you know, huge teams in Formula 1, they can afford to spend money, afford to spend R&D time on their new Challenger for this year and still make up the numbers for 2017. So for the last minute or so, I've changed the picture to a side picture of the Force India, just looking at some detailing on the side pod and also that rear wing. On the side pod, they've got a really nice undercut that was there from last year, but I think they've exaggerated it a little bit more there on the side pod, but a really nice swooping side pod. And as we get to the rear, it actually has changed a little bit compared to last year. Last year, they had, similar to the Toro Rosso, they sort of had a extended out plume and overhang on where I've circled there on the back of the side pod. That sort of helped cooling, I guess, and where the engine was. I'm guessing along with some help with the Mercedes, they've packaged that engine a little bit better at the back of the car, and so they've got an even bigger kind of Coke bottle shape, and it's totally smooth right there by the Skull Candy sponsor logo. As we look to the rear of the car, I've picked out the strakes on the end of the rear end plate and slot gaps at the front, pretty much the same as they ended with in Abu Dhabi, and honestly, a lot of this car is a lot like what they ended with at Abu Dhabi. It very much the B-spec car, just evolved a little bit. Even the front end is completely the same. Obviously, it would be the same as most teams have been when they finish Abu Dhabi. They pretty much bring the same front wing. Force India have stuck with those nostrils on the nose, which obviously helps airflow get underneath the car. Obviously, it has a bit of drawback because this in turn will actually cause a little bit of turbulence because you've just got more bodywork to kind of hit almost, in a sense. You know, instead of like a smooth bit of kind of flat paneling that the air can hit, you've got kind of three separate little pylon bits that the air's going to hit and kind of bounce off. Also, as the air enters these nostrils, obviously it's not going to be completely, you know, a nice smooth entry into these kind of cavities. So it's going to be a little bit turbulent as it kind of hits off. So the Force India definitely still think it's within their philosophy to go with that path. And obviously they've done plenty of R&D, so it must be working for them in terms of getting enough air underneath that car. As we go into the rear picture of the car, again, just picking out those details, pretty much the same as last year. But just again, as usual with all 2016 cars, they've got this new wastegate exhaust. Force India actually quite odd. They've actually kind of wrapped it up in a kind of, they've sort of got a band of metal around all three. They've got the Mickey Mouse tailpipes, obviously, on either side of the huge exhaust, but you can see that kind of extra bit on the side, that kind of band that kind of just wraps the exhaust together, which I thought was quite nice. If we move on to a shot where the Force India is going down the pit lane, you can really see that Coke bottle shape on the Force India, and you can see just around the Claro logo and just going down to that orange stripe on the back of the side pod. If you compare it to pictures of last year's car, there's no more bulge coming out there, so again, they've kind of tidied up that rear end. But there you can see the nostrils clearly on the front of the car, and also that S-duct, which they've changed slightly. They've changed the profile of that S-duct a little bit. They've kind of widened it a little bit, and I think they made it a little bit shallower. So as a whole, not too much to talk about with the Force India. Very much just last year's car evolved into a 2016 spec car with the exhaust, tidy up the rear end. A lot of teams are starting to try and really get that Coke bottle shape working on the rear end, but as a whole, Force India sort of almost went with the kind of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So Force India, they feel like they were in a really strong position at the end of last year, which they were. I mean, the car was very, very solid. It was getting up into some really high positions depending on strategy they were going for, and so as a whole, there's not too much to change, and obviously they're playing it smart. Force India have never been a team with a huge amount of money. In the past, we've seen that Force India have started season strong and then kind of fall off a cliff because they don't have enough money to carry on R&D. So they're playing it very smart. They're keeping money and resources for 2017. For a team like them, it's very, very smart for them. So as a whole, that has been the Force India car. Guys, if you have enjoyed the video, hit that like button. It does really help me out. Let me know what you think of this car as a whole. The livery is pretty much the same thing, but maybe some eagle-eyed Force India fans can tell me if it's any different. Let me know in the comments below. If you're new around here, then do subscribe. I'll have more car analysis videos coming up. We'll be doing the Williams, the Red Bull later on, probably either later today or probably tomorrow. I've basically been keeping all the cars that haven't changed too much towards the end. You know, the Williams, the Force India, and the Red Bull all haven't changed too much. You know, the Force India definitely hasn't changed that much. The Williams hasn't changed that much as well. I mean, it's got some interesting detailing, but actually, as a whole, the general look of the car hasn't changed too much. They're actually going to be changing their nose before Melbourne, so I've sort of been trying to delay the Williams car to see maybe if we can kind of get a glimpse of maybe what their new nose will be, but it looks like they'll be saving that till the second test. So I probably might do the Williams car later on in the week, or if you guys want me to, I'll just save it till next week's testing when we can actually look at their new nose. And the same with the Red Bull. The Red Bull's really been tidied up quite a lot, but there's no actual huge major development. So let me know in the comments below about that, guys. Do you want me to do the Red Bull anyway and the Williams anyway this week, or do you want me to save it till next week when perhaps we definitely know the Williams will maybe hopefully have the new nose by a second test, or they might even save it till Melbourne, in which case do you want me to do the Williams at all until we get to Australia? Because I just don't know how much worth it is me making a video on it if it hasn't changed all that too much. I mean, there's some nice detailing on the Williams, but I don't want to make a video just purely on about 5 details on the car and that's about it. And as for the Red Bull, they've kind of smoothened out the rear end, they've smoothened out everything, but in terms of actual aerodynamic devices, they haven't changed all too much. Even Adrian Newey cited in interviews on Sky Sports that really it's all down to Renault to improve their engine in terms of Red Bull's improvement this year. Really adding more aero to the car is really not going to help them and improve lap time. So tell me about that in the comments below. Do you want me to do it anyway this week, or do you want me to wait until there's some actual development? Because I just don't want to waste your time and my time in terms of making a video which doesn't have too much in it in terms of content. But anyway, guys, if you have enjoyed the video, nonetheless, remember to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do subscribe for weekly Formula 1 videos, not just real life, but also gaming stuff. You might not be into gaming stuff, but you might get interested with it if you watch 1 or 2 videos. But anyway, guys, I've been Arava. Hope you enjoyed the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.